We looked
not
at
merely
piles of millions
but it's true.
of
Woodrow
dead
Wilson
bodies,
failed
and
with
we
the
said
League of
that's a
Nations.
bad idea. We looked at piles of millions of dead bodies and said that's a bad idea. Let's not do that anymore. Let's actually have a framework and rules and laws. And Trump is blowing that up. By the way, he bombed fishing boats from Venezuela, Trinidad, and Tobago, and Colombia. He just did the regime change in Venezuela. He bombed Yemen and Somalia and Nigeria and Iran. He's threatening Greenland and Panama and Canada and Cuba and Mexico. And you sit there the whole time and act like it's okay. Is there anything Trump can do, Michael Knowles, that you would say I can?
So Kyle Kulinski and Michael Knowles get into a little tiff. And so I wanted to see how that goes down.
Dave is defining America first in the way that he prefers, and I think there are plenty of people who wish to do that. But Dave, though a very popular podcaster, never won a presidential election, and Trump has been clear on what he means by America first, the political movement that he built, that people voted for in his coalition since the beginning. President Trump campaigned the first time around on destroying ISIS, so obviously that does not mean that America's only going to look inward. President Trump has carried out attacks, military operations that were extremely successful in Iran, in Syria, in Afghanistan, obviously in Venezuela. He's been talking about taking Greenland and even invading America's evil top hat, Canada, though I think he's mostly joking about that one, since the beginning. So that's what that means. And what it comes down to is that America is a global empire. We just are. People can be upset about that, but unless your geopolitics comes strictly from Reddit, if your geopolitics actually comes from history, you recognize that we've been an empire since the Louisiana Purchase, okay? And we've been a muscular global empire since the Second World War. So President Trump's vision, I think, actually rejects two extremes. It rejects a conservative isolationism, and it rejects a liberal internationalism. And it posits a conservative imperialism that says that we are going to recognize our role in the world, but we are going to pursue that role in limited ways with America's interest at heart. So there's been no regime change in Venezuela. We're talking about regime change in Venezuela. The regime is still in place. What we did was depose the leader. We left the vice president in place, and we said, act in a way that is appropriate in accordance with the law and our interests, or we're going to kill you. That's very different than a Bushy-era neocon regime change in Iraq. Even when we're talking about Iran, the Trump administration has not gone in a particularly overt way yet. But even there, we would be talking about a restoration of the Pahlavi regime, most likely, that goes back to 1925. So I grant there are all sorts of risks to interventions, but we're the global empire, and frankly, even the American Revolution comes out of.
Yeah, no, I can't stand Dave Smith either. I used to like Dave Smith, but not anymore. He's too much of like an Israel Spurg.
Wars of global empire. It comes out of the 7 Years' War, which itself was a derivation of the War of Austrian Succession. To pretend that we don't have a role in geopolitics is to ignore all of American history.
Okay, Kyle Kulinski, I can see you grimacing through a lot of what Michael was saying there. You said Trump says the US will run Venezuela and he threatens Colombia and Mexico. Arrest this psychotic motherfucker. Before I get you to expand on that thesis, I mean, the point I was making to Dave, if I want to elaborate on where I sit with this, because I've had a bit of time to look at this play out, is you look at Maduro. Everyone thought, my God, this is going to be World War III. Actually, Maduro is going to end up in a New York courtroom, and he's been got rid of. Everyone seems to agree that's a good thing for not just the Venezuelan people, but the world. No American troops died in what was an incredibly efficient surgical military strike to get him out of there. And if you have a more compliant leader of Venezuela, albeit part of the same regime.
Wait, what? Who does Michael Knowles ass kiss? Who's the whore? That's funny. I do agree with you, though. I like Michael Knowles the best. Matt Walsh is okay, but sometimes Matt Walsh could have these, like, whenever he has bad takes, he tends to like double and triple down on them, like, and that's the only thing that's annoying about Matt Walsh. Nala, oh yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, completely agree with you on that.
That can probably only be a good thing. If you look at the argument about Greenland, for example, I'd be struck by some of the people that I didn't expect to think this was a good idea. A British general last week talking about this, saying that from a strategic security point of view, it would make perfect sense for America to have Greenland. And is there a deal to be done? He didn't think invading it was the right thing, and nor do I. But is there a deal to be done with 60,000 people who live in Greenland that could actually improve the security of the United States and the West against the obvious threat from China and Russia and so on? And I can get through the others. Iran, getting rid of the Ayatollah and the mullahs is unquestionably a good thing for the world. It's how you do these things and whether you plan and prepare properly for what follows next that I think are the debatable points. And history says that's normally, unfortunately, been very badly done. But this is what I meant when I said to Dave that I understand the argument. I may not agree with all of it, but I do understand the logic to what Trump is doing here. Do you?
No.
No, because we don't have a right to act like this around the world. We're supposed to be a nation among nations, not a nation above nations. And they used to at least lie to us in the past and say that this is good for the world and we're spreading freedom and democracy.
I think for our safety, as citizens, I think it's best if we were above all the other nations. Just saying. Just for our safety. If we are the superpower and other countries are afraid to attack us and such, I think that's better.
See, now they don't even bother to lie. Now it's naked, rank, disgusting imperialism where they say, we're going to take the oil. And the point is that we're going to take the oil. We're going to take the minerals. We're going to take the precious metals. We're doing this for our corporations. We're doing it for the Epstein class, the billionaires. And this, to piggyback on what Dave Smith said, is frankly not what many of the MAGA voters thought they were signing up for. They thought America First actually meant America First. By the way, you also replaced the Maduro regime with the Maduro regime. Congratulations on that. It's also been now a week straight of pro-regime protests. Now you have roving gangs of Venezuelan militias that are kidnapping Americans. But again, I come back to the fundamental point, which is if you sign on to stuff like this, you're saying might makes right and the law of the jungle is back. What you're saying is China has a right to go into whatever smaller country they want and depose the leader and say we're doing it because we can and we have the right to do it and we have bigger guns and there's nothing you can do to stop it. So they're never going to address that fundamental question, which is why do we have a right? Do we actually believe in international law or was that all a joke? Are we rolling the clock back to the 1700s and the 1800s and we're going super primitive style here? And I think the answer to that is yes, they want to go super primitive style.
Today's show is sponsored by Oxford Natural, makers of the
Oxford Natural, the most natural Oxford that you could find. You can look everywhere else. There's these other Oxfords that claim to be natural, but it doesn't get more natural than this Oxford Natural. Use code word Pierce. And thank you very much, John Mondragon, for $9.99. If you are a nation among nations, then he was above us. That was a really scary thought. Yeah, it really was. Thank you very much, John Mondragon. Very much appreciated. Remember, use code word Pierce.
Conventions, the Nuremberg Tribunal, excuse me, the Geneva Convention and the Nuremberg Tribunal.
Yes, those exist, but international laws, the jus gentium goes back to antiquity. However, unfortunately, a lot of our liberal friends think history began a few decades ago.
The League of Nations was useless. It fell apart, and that's why we had the UN. That's why we had the Geneva Convention.
Right, I'm talking about...
That is true. That is consent. Unapologetic preacher. Yeah, he gave consent. Good point.
Millennia ago,
because we looked at piles of millions of dead bodies, and we said that's a bad idea. We looked at piles of millions of dead bodies and said, that's a bad idea. Let's not do that anymore. Let's actually have a framework and rules and laws. And Trump is blowing that up. By the way, he bombed fishing boats from Venezuela, Trinidad, and Tobago, and Colombia. He just did the regime change in Venezuela. He bombed Yemen and Somalia and Nigeria and Iran.
Yeah.
He's threatening Greenland and Panama and Canada and Cuba and Mexico. And you sit there the whole time and act like it's okay. Is there anything Trump could do, Michael Knowles, that you would say, I condemn it, and you hop off the Trump train, or are you going to tickle his taint for the rest of your fucking life?
No, there have been plenty of Trump policies that I've criticized because he's only right about 99.78% of the time. So the First Step Act I thought was a misstep. But I would say the rest. Excuse me. I would say the rest of the administration has been very successful.
Kyle Kalinske is like, but he's like an anti-Trump. Like he's a cuck as well. He's the one that's cucking this country to foreigners. I think that's the ultimate cuckoldry right there.
What's your problem? What's
my problem? Is that you're a cuck and you're a hack and you're not an independent thinker and you're meat riding Trump.
Why do you say that?
You're not an independent thinker. No, you're not an independent thinker. All the people that are anti-Trump, none of them are independent thinkers because literally their logic is Trump for it? Well, then I'm against it. Is Trump against it? Then I'm for it. Doesn't matter what it is. Trump could come out and be like, everybody drinking piss is bad. Don't drink your own piss, okay? It's disgusting. Don't do it. And these freaking lefties will be like, oh, yeah? Well, I'll show you. I'm going to take a big swig of my own piss. That's what they do. So, yeah, no, Kyle.
He's doing
I just answered your question.
You don't care.
I just
Yeah,
answered your question, and I
99.78%.
corrected
Congratulations. You rented your brain to a war criminal pedophile rapist. I hope you're happy.
A war criminal pedophile rapist? Do you you brought up a point? You brought up international law, and you made a very false point, a dumb point, which is that international law began only a few hundred years ago. I corrected you, and I pointed out that the international law is part of the Western tradition. That, excuse me one second. It goes back to antiquity. It's a principle of the jus gentium. And then you said, well, international law has failed because of the League of Nations failure, which I think is actually undermining your argument and proving my point and proving Trump's point, because the liberal internationalism that was established by people like Woodrow Wilson did in fact fail, which is why we need to restore an older and more classical conception of the international order, which is precisely what Trump's doing. So I think you've hoisted yourself with your own petard. And then you just make a lot of vulgar sort of non sequiturs because you don't have a leg to stand on.
All right, let me bring in.
Let me ask you this question. Hold on, Piers. Let me ask him a question real quick. Tell me the name of the Minister of Defense in Venezuela.
I don't know. Whatever his name is.
Well, and that's the problem. Is that you're
Rodriguez
advocating for a regime change. You don't know the first thing.
I didn't. I just said the opposite. I argued against the regime change.
He actually said the opposite. I heard Michael Knowles.
I just want to correct something.
Michael Knowles say the regime remains there, right? So he said the opposite. In fact, I want to bring in Coleman.
No, but he wanted to take out Maduro. Don't give me that cutesy little.
Yes, but he made the point that the regime is still. He made the point the regime is still there, and the vice president appears to be much more compliant with running Venezuela the way America would prefer for its national security than Maduro. So that's what Michael said. He didn't advocate regime change. Let me bring in Coleman Hughes. Coleman,
suck it, Kyle. Suck it. And thank you very much, Bandit, for the $2. But my pee is sterile, just like me, Kyle K. Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much, Bandit. Very much appreciated.
President is
hang on, Kyle. Let me bring in
regime change.
Coleman hasn't said a word yet. Coleman, what's interesting about you, I think, with this is you've been striving to be quite nuanced with your take on all this stuff that's going on. And that's kind of where I found myself, is that sometimes taking a beat, looking at it from just a step away, and trying not to be too knee-jerk about all these things, often, can be beneficial to your mental health, but actually can probably better, I think, represent what is really going on here. You know, everyone wants to go to extremes very, very quickly about everything and take a very tribal position. I've been struck.
Well, speaking of the founders and the American relation to foreign affairs, what was our first big international war? Was it the Iraq War? Was it the Gulf War?
Yeah, you're talking about the Barbary Pirates or whatever. I don't know.
You're right. I'm talking about 1801.
See, the thing is that Michael Knowles is actually very smart. Like Michael Knowles is pretty good at debates because he memorizes his facts. He knows what he's talking about. Like Michael Knowles is a very smart guy. So this is going to be pretty interesting to see him go up against Dave.
Dave and it was actually our founding fathers who waged that war.
Okay, but Dave,
it goes back to
Thomas Jefferson waged the war. Whatever. We don't have real time to get into that, but sure, we got 5 wars here.
We have plenty of time, Dave, but you don't want to get into it because it
doesn't
cut your argument.
No, I'm happy, Michael. If you want to come on my podcast, I'll do 2 hours on the Barbary Wars with you. The point is that we're trying to talk about the 5 conflicts going on right now.
Piers Morgan's like, but you're on my show now. Argue it now, guys. Come on.
Sure.
Okay, let me address the Venezuela point.
Sure.
Dave.
Let me see. Coleman might have something smart to say.
Yeah. So you're totally right. There is always a risk to.
I like how Dave literally tagged in this guy Coleman here. Literally tagged him, and he's like, "Oh no, but Coleman, I think has something to say, right? Please save me. Please save me."
And I don't mean to downplay that, but you have to factor in there is a risk to letting rogue regimes that, for instance, in the case of Venezuela, invite Hezbollah into the country, buy weapons from all of our adversaries, Iran, China, Russia, etc. A regime that has literally run this country, which used to be one of the wealthier countries in Latin America, into the ground, to the point that people are literally eating wildlife. They're breaking into zoos, eating cats and dogs because this regime has totally destroyed the country. There is a risk to allowing a country like that to just continue doing whatever it's going to do. And so the idea that inaction has no risks is one thing I want to flag as a false argument. And the second thing I want to say is you're quick to reach for analogies to the Middle East. And I understand that. I mean, the American public has lost so much faith in the American political class because of our interventions in the Middle East. And the lesson I think you've drawn and other people have drawn is that therefore regime change is always wrong. I don't think that that's the right lesson. I mean, to me, that's analogous to taking the lesson from World War II that regime change is always right because it worked in Japan and Germany. The truth is, it's different depending on the situation on the ground. In most of the middle, you're talking about Iraq, Syria, Yemen. You're talking about deeply sectarian countries with deep divisions, countries that are essentially civil wars waiting to happen if the lid comes off. Venezuela is not a country like that. Again, the risk is not zero, but it's not a sectarian country. It was a functioning country for a very long time. And so the risk of civil war type outcomes like Syria and Iraq is just much lower than it is in the Middle East.
So what about
can I respond to that? Can I please respond to that?
Hang on.
Yes, please.
Hang on. I want to just center it actually just on this point. Let's bring it right up to date with Iran, Coleman, if I may, because, you know, depending on who you listen to, there's a revolution going on driven by the people to depose an incredibly unpopular regime that's been there since 1979. Are we seeing the potential for civil war there? Are we seeing a revolution that should happen organically without any interference or aid? Is Trump right to say we're going to stand up for protesters who want freedom and democracy against a tyrannical regime and so on? In other words, all the things that we've been discussing about other scenarios, let's bring it to Iran. What's your view of what's happening there?
Well, Iran is, I think it's, you're asking me, Piers?
Yeah.
I think we should support the opposition. Absolutely. You know, I don't think we should put boots on the ground. I think I agree with Dave. Our record in the Middle East recently, I think, precludes that for many reasons, just practical reasons. But we absolutely should support the opposition. Iran was a country that was a semi-functional democracy for a very long time. In a lot of ways, it's a more coherent country, a more coherent body politic than Iraq, Syria, and Yemen, et cetera. So I think the odds of success for a revolution there are higher.
Ludicrous.
But that's not saying much, considering that the region is extremely volatile to begin with. So I totally support the opposition. I want to see the Islamic regime go down on their terms, and we should do what we can to support that, short of full-scale military intervention.
Okay, Michael Knowles, what do you feel about Iran?
Come on, Pierce, let me respond to that.
Okay, I'll come to you, Michael.
Yeah.
All right, Dave, you respond, then we'll come to Michael.
Well, yeah, because I mean, there's just so much there. And like, look, I mean, even if you're going to say that, like, well, we have a bad track record of regime change in the Middle East. I mean, I think I made this point. I think I saw your point coming. And that's why I said, yeah, we also have a terrible track record of regime change in Central and South America. And that's why I gave the example of Guatemala. We can look at Nicaragua. We can look at all types of different interventions that just got a whole lot of people killed and didn't do anything for the people or for the country. And Coleman, yeah, fair enough. There's a risk to inaction the same way there's a risk to action, but the risk to action is to our boys and our budget and bankrupting our country. And so it's just a totally different risk that you take on when you intervene than when you don't. And, you know, I got to say, Coleman, these are the same arguments that were used in Iraq. What you said about what you said about Venezuela and Iran. This is why the neocons said we were going to be greeted as liberators. Chalabi had assured them that the people hated Saddam and they were going to be pro-American. And you said there's not sectarian conflict in Venezuela. I mean, Venezuela, no, of course there is. It's the mixed European elite class and then the majority of natives. And that's who Chavez and Maduro always carried. At least I know in Chavez's election, that was always his base. And I agree with you, man. Like, it is true that that government has ruined that country. I am not, I hate socialism as much, if not more, than anybody on this panel. But the thing is, like, it was a communist government in Guatemala too. And the civil war that killed hundreds of thousands of people there didn't make it better for them. And so I just think that, like, the idea that we're so confident we should back the resistance in Iran. Well, we also had regime changes in that region that didn't require like huge numbers of boots on the ground, and they were catastrophes too. And to hear you guys talk about the most likely thing is that, but you know, because now you understand we have to spread hereditary monarchy. We're not bringing democracy anymore. The idea that the Shaw's kid is going to walk in there and take power. I say, of all the crazy things Donald Trump has said, that was one thing that I think he got right. Yeah, I don't think he's got the juice. And the, you know, the options of what would arise in either of these conflicts, there's at least a
I know, right? Emmett's getting triggered. But yeah, no, seriously, I agree though. Fucking libertarians, right? Yeah, I hate socialism, but please just let them be. Just leave the socialists alone, guys. All right, they have the freedom to be socialists if they want to. Okay, leave them alone. Leave the socialists alone.
Strong possibility that there'd be tons of conflict and a worse government, if not just as bad a government at the end of the day.
Okay, Michael Knowles, the latest polymarket odds on Iran, US strikes 77% likelihood. Khomeini, the Ayatollah, out by end of January, I think is now up to 24%. Fall of the Iranian regime by 2028, 47%. So the money is moving in the predictive world to suggesting that this is the beginning, as the Chancellor of Germany says, this is the beginning of the end of that regime. But we have been on this rodeo a few times in Iran, and it's been brutally repressed in the past. What do you think is going to happen here? And in terms of that point Dave makes, when things happen organically, you know, the fall of the Berlin Wall, we all remember watching that and how good that felt. And it didn't need outside direct military intervention. Is it not better for America to sit back and watch the Iranian people determine their own future in the way that appears to be happening than potentially cause mayhem by directly interfering on their behalf?
Well, I think those are two separate points, and I think my friends on this panel are taken with.
Yeah, I agree with you, Eric. Report came out, gambling is largest industry growing by GDP. They're pushing gambling really hard in our media. Yeah, I noticed that too. They're always talking about the website that he just brought up, fucking brain fart. But they always bring that up, like, oh, this is the odds here on this website and blah blah blah. And I'm like, that's kind of weird. What is it? Polymarket. You know, like, oh, Polymarket says this, and I'm just like, yeah, why are they always talking about this like gambling stuff? You know? Yeah, they are. I never thought about it. Yeah, neither have I, but I have noticed kind of like how they bring up Polymarket, like they're legitimizing it. And I'm like, that is weird.
A lot of abstract ideology, whether it's libertarianism or leftism. I'm a little more interested in practical politics. So what I think is most important here is that Iran remains orderly and does not descend into total chaos. Iran is a real country with a more of a unified history. And also that the Iranian people do better. Obviously, the Islamic Revolution was terrible for them. It destroyed their material conditions, led to a huge erosion of their rights and liberties. And so it's worth remembering that the policy of the United States has been for regime change in Iran since 1979. So the Iranians have been undermining our interests all around the world for a very long time, not just looking at the recent Iraq war where they killed over 600 Americans, but going all the way back to the 1983 Beirut barracks bombings, going back to the attack on U.S. troops in Saudi Arabia in 1996. I think we would all agree, I hope we're all mature enough to agree, that nations have interests, especially when you are a major power or a hegemonic power as the United States. We have interests around the world. Dave keeps pointing to his displeasure over one intervention in Guatemala. The United States has intervened for 150 years, 88 times in Latin America. It's usually worked out very well. Sometimes it hasn't worked out well. But what would have been worse is if we had let, during the Cold War, the Soviets get a hold in Latin America. What is worse is allowing communists to run roughshod, both from the perspective of the people there, as well as from the interests of the United States.
Yeah,
New Year is
completely. What is Mondo?
About starting afresh, and today's sponsor will help you to do exactly that. Mando Whole Body Deodorant is created by
Mando Whole Body Deodorant is the best deodorant that you could ever find. No other deodorant even comes close. I was using Axe body spray for the longest time, even replacing my showers with it. However, with Mondo deodorant, now I don't gotta use Axe no more. Buy Mondo deodorant, code word peers.
impunity, take Greenland if it wants, etc., etc. What is to stop America's enemies using the exact same argument to do what the hell they like? For example, Vladimir Putin must be sitting there going, well, hang on, every argument about why I invaded Ukraine, that's just gone up in smoke, hasn't it? I mean, it's the same argument. I wanted to do it. It's in my national security interest. You've got the...
I want to fast forward a little bit because they talk about up here. Michael and Dave, they go back and forth, I think, on Venezuelan here. And Venezuela, now they talk about the ICE officer shooter, which I do want to hear about. All right, let's go. Skip ahead here.
Same time. That's why I think nuance is an important factor in these things. It can be
but that's the cover story.
Hang on, Kyle.
Can it just be pointed out?
It can be about oil. It can be about oil. It can be about Maduro being a gangster. It can be about a number of things.
This was
Trump's a gangster.
sold to us.
Trump's a gangster.
All right.
Trump's a gangster.
Isn't it funny that we had this whole conversation?
Dude,
and while you're
wow.
saying it could be about all these things, you know what no one's bringing up? drugs. And that's what it was sold to us as.
Right.
Just like all these other wars, they just lie through their teeth. It has nothing to do with the drug problem.
I mean, listen, when you're taking the side of the lefty commie here, which Kyle Kolensky is, he's like a far left guy. I follow him on X. Like, he's far left. Like, he's not moderate or anything. If he lies and says he's a moderate, he's fucking lying through his teeth, because he does not everything he posts, there's nothing moderate about anything he posts. He's far left. So if you're on here and you're siding with the far lefty here, yeah, something's wrong with your take here.
It's in
Tiny
part about
fraction of it, and nothing
Fucking
nothing
libertarians.
to do with the fentanyl problem, which is the real crisis. It's a total pretext for war. And I got to say, man, by the way, I kind of agree with Michael on the concept of international law. But the thing about it is that this is totally illegal by our own law, by the Constitution of the United States of America, which every politician puts their hand on a Bible and swears before all of us to God that they will do everything in their power to defend and execute. There was no imminent attack here. Donald Trump had all the time in the world to go to Congress and get permission for this, and he just didn't want to.
Like, if I was talking and I saw Kyle nodding his head in agreement, I'd be like, wait a minute, what the hell am I saying here? I must be saying something wrong. I do not want anything I say. Like, if I see him agreeing with anything I say, I know I'm doing something wrong here.
And if you want to just say, like, by the way, Mike, it's funny because you point out I'm a libertarian or Kyle's a leftist. Ironically, we're the only ones taking the conservative position here on this.
Piers is laughing. Yeah, that's silly. Straight up silly. We're the only one taking the conservative position here. We're the real conservatives.
We are not an empire.
Is that so?
Actually, the Supreme, yes.
Ridiculous.
Yes, that's actually right.
Dave says that with all seriousness. All seriousness. It's one of for a comedian, that's the first thing he said that's funny, but he wasn't even trying to be funny. And even Pierce is laughing. Michael Knowles is laughing because it's utterly absurd.
There's a long tradition. Do you know your history on this,
there's a
Michael?
long tradition of
Well, hold on, let me
libertarians
finish
telling conservatives what we believe. And I'm
Yeah.
it for one.
No. There's a long tradition of the best conservatives having the exact same foreign policy I do, and then a bunch of former communists who were atheists convinced you guys that it was right wing to support wars everywhere. By the way, the Monroe
They
Doctrine.
convinced Thomas Jefferson in
I don't think-
1801.
I'm not.
I don't know about that.
No. I'm not talking about the Barbary wars. Okay. Anyway,
Or the
point
Monroe
is that
administration, or the Roosevelt administration.
Dude, do you even know what the Monroe Doctrine is?
Dude, Michael Knowles is just dog walking these guys.
You say the Monroe Doctrine means that we get to run our hemisphere? No, it doesn't.
No,
the Monroe
it means that
Doctrine.
we keep our
Michael, let me
adversaries
finish
out
a
of our
thought, and then you can respond to it. No, that's not actually true. It meant that Europe couldn't have any more colonies here, and in turn, we wouldn't interfere in Europe. By the way, it's not a law. It's something a president said once in a speech, and it hasn't been the cornerstone of our foreign. It has.
Hey, tell your wife we said happy birthday, MSM Liars. Tell her we said happy birthday.
Hasn't been. Have we not interfered in Europe? Have we not interfered in Europe for over 200 years? Is that what you're telling me, Michael?
And then we became the world empire.
That's true. Right, exactly. So we abandoned the Monroe Doctrine. We never followed it at all. And the Monroe Doctrine never said, they said that Europe couldn't establish more colonies. They already had several, that they couldn't establish more colonies. It didn't say that if there's a country that does a mineral deal with a country somewhere else because we won't allow our companies to do it with them, that therefore we can topple the leader. This is completely illegal by our own Constitution.
I'm happy to explain it. It's true. In 1823, the Soviet Union did not yet exist, and other adversaries around the world did not yet exist. We have expanded the notion that European powers, which were a threat to us, should not interfere in the Western Hemisphere, to those other adversaries as well, who you recognize are adversaries. It seems to me where the big difference here on the panel is that you, Dave, at least will acknowledge that America has interests and there are bad regimes. You're making some crazy claims that the Constitution doesn't allow the United States to be commander-in-chief of the army. You're making a crazy claim that Congress.
No, I'm not. I'm saying it doesn't allow them to declare a war.
You're making a crazy claim that it was, excuse me. You're making a crazy claim that it was somehow illegal to follow a court order from 2020 to take out Maduro and arrest him. Anyway, you're making all sorts of crazy
Is that
claims,
how we do foreign policy by court
Hold on one second,
order?
guys. One second. I'm happy to. The difference here is, Dave, you at least acknowledge America has interests, and you're saying because we sometimes make mistakes. Hold on one second. I'm just trying to get my point out. Because we sometimes make mistakes, you're saying that we should not pursue those interests, or you're saying that the consequences could be worse. The point that Kyle is making is actually different from yours. Kyle's point is that America has interests, and we should oppose those interests because he thinks that America is the great Satan.
That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you very much, Nate, for the $10. Almost half the chat is tickling their tonsils with Slim Jims today. Like and subscribe. Sorry, I'm late. Boss was having conversations with President Dinkus. Yeah, no worries, brother. Thank you very much for the 10. Thank you for all your support, Nate. You're a legend. And he's absolutely right. There is a lot of tonsil tickling Slim Jim gobblers here in the chat. There's still some gays in the chat. Make sure you like this stream.
Argument. Thank you for the
guys,
straw
guys,
man.
hang
I'm
on,
actually
hang
making
on.
an
We're
argument
running- we're
in
running a
favor
bit-
of
we're
law
running a
and
bit out of
order
time,
and
and I
intelligence
do-
in foreign policy.
Hang on a sec, Carl.
Thank you very much.
I think we've covered this well. I do want to move to, before we run out of time. I want to move to Minnesota, and I want to start with you, Coleman, if I may. This has been another huge story in the last week.
Well, what's funny about Knowles too is he's very calm about it. Like he doesn't shout over anybody. Like he just says the facts there, and then everyone else spurgs out because he actually knows what he's talking about.
And it goes to domestic law. It's, I think, a complex story, again, that requires a nuanced view. And I'll lay mine out, Coleman, just for the record. I've watched this video a dozen times or more from every potential angle. And it is my belief that it is utterly ridiculous to categorize what this woman, Renee Good, was doing as domestic terrorism. I see somebody who got a little panicky as the ICE guys came towards her and decided to drive away, and that the ICE guy in front of her car, who coincidentally a few months earlier got dragged by a car for a sustained period of time and had injuries as a result, potentially affecting his judgment in a similar situation, I suspect will be a key part of this. He reacts in a equally panicky way and shoots her 3 times. And I don't see him as a cold-blooded murderer who did this deliberately as a way to murder somebody for the hell of it. I don't see her as a completely blameless part of this. I think she took decisions which led her down a path which I think were extremely unfortunate and, as it turned out, deadly for her. In other words, I think it's quite a complex story, which if you freeze frame it right down to every grab we've seen, anyone who thinks they have an absolute certainty about what happened here, I think is lying. And I think they're just, again, moving to the tribal place. This has to be this because my side believe this, or it has to be this because my side believe that. Am I wrong?
I couldn't agree more, Piers. I want to separate 2 issues really quickly. I'll get to the tragic death of Renee Good, but first I want to separate the issue of how ICE officers are behaving in Minnesota in general, right? Right now, social media is being flooded with videos of ICE officers needlessly escalating situations, questioning U.S. citizens who legally do not have to answer any questions. Some ICE officers seem to be under the impression that you're not allowed to film them. You are allowed to film them. And even, the worst part of this is that the Trump administration, the Department of Homeland Security, seems to have indicated to ICE officers that filming them is the same as doxing them, which it's not, right? So there is obviously, I think there's probably tons of ICE officers not getting videoed that are doing their jobs responsibly, and it's a tough job and it's a dangerous job, and I respect that. But there's a lot of ICE officers that are just running roughshod over all of their responsibilities as officers, and they're being
Take here. Well, do you have any proof of that? Like, do you have any proof that that's what's going on? If these officers, if they're not all being filmed, then do you have any proof of that, or are you just making a claim? Listen, I'm not going to make a blanket statement and saying all ICE officers are good and are doing the right thing. Obviously, that's not true. Okay, there's going to be some bad apples here, but the thing is that you can't you can't talk about ICE right now because it's like they're. Like, I just think it's wrong to go against ICE right now because they already have a hard enough job as it is. Like, they're already battling it out on the streets with these crazed lefties who are crazed and deranged, and you're already having people in our government like Governor Walz and Jacob Frey that are encouraging this resistance and such. So, like, we can't be going against ICE right now because they're already having a difficult job as it is, and it's being made worse by the people in our very own government telling the citizens, yeah, no, you resist. So, yeah, I don't like this whole notion of going against ICE right now.
On by the administration. I think that's really important to say up front, that that's a real phenomenon and needs to be talked about. Now, let's separate that from the issue of Renee Good, who was tragically killed by John.
Like, there's time for nuance and I don't know. I don't think the time for nuance is here anymore. You know, again, not saying ICE is perfect, but there's none of this time for this nuance. We can't be doing that right now. ICE needs like our support more than ever.
Jonathan Ross. Now, here, Piers, you're right to point out there are so many critiques of how this officer and his partner handled the situation. Why, officers are trained not to be in front of a car to begin with, right? That's one on a laundry list of ways in which
it doesn't matter. Like this whole talking point of they're trained not to be in front of cars. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they goes against their, even if they're breaking their training about being in front of the car, doesn't mean then you're allowed to try to run them over. Doesn't mean that.
This was terrible policing. However, a lot of prominent Democrats are saying that this is murder. Murder. That is a legal term with a legal standard. Now, if this goes to trial, it's likely to get removed to a federal court, which is going to be favorable for the officer. And what the jury is probably going to be instructed is if this officer had reason to believe he could have suffered bodily harm, he or his partner could have suffered serious bodily harm, then by statute, he's authorized to use deadly force. The jury is going to be instructed if he felt he was in serious danger. Now, we get the benefit of seeing 5 different angles on the video in slow motion over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So we can come to the conclusion that, he was out of he was out of line of the car after those.
He wasn't,
those
though.
Second and third shots.
He wasn't. The video shows that he was struck by the car. If he didn't get out of the way, it would have been much worse. But there's already the hospital report saying he suffered internal bleeding. That right there shows that impact was made there. So I don't know what the heck he's talking about.
Shots, but he didn't have that advantage. He experienced that in real time.
Like, I get what he's saying. He's saying that the officer didn't have that advantage. We do, but even so, we still see on video us, the people that have the luxury of seeing this on video over and over again. We see that he was struck by the car.
In the blur of real life, the whole interaction was less than 2 seconds, and he had one shot at it. Not only that, his partner had his hand through the window, which, as you said, is precisely the situation that had put him in the hospital 6 months prior.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough to convince a jury that he didn't have reason to believe he was in risk or his partner of serious bodily harm.
I think from a
That's true. Yeah, that is absolutely true. Again, the video evidence is right there. It's clear as day. Thank you very much, Nate, for the $10. There is a huge difference between a police officer sworn to protect the community and a federal agent sworn to collect and detain those who are not of legal status. Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much, Nate, for the 10. Very much appreciated, brother.
legal perspective, I think you're probably right. And I think a jury may well end up making that determination based on the application of the law. But Kyle, you know, I talked about both sides taking sort of implacable, incendiary positions. You compared ICE agents to Nazis, described the officer as an ICE thug who murdered a woman on camera by shooting her in the face. I mean, you're determining there that what we have watched with our own eyes, because we got the benefit of seeing all the videos, is somebody making a deliberate calculation to murder that woman for no reason.
I think he did. And
Why would you do that?
Study the video closely. Well, I'll explain it to you. So first of all, these guys are all roided up
Hey,
freaks.
Mrs. D.
Let's point that out, that these are like Proud Boys and white nationalists and you know, the dregs of society who have now been given a gun and a badge.
Well, that's a ridiculous generalization. And again, I don't think that helps. It does, that kind of,
let me finish
but that
talking
kind
and
of
then you can talk.
generalization
You want me
doesn't
to
help
disrupt
your
the point?
argument. It makes you sound
No,
equally
but I don't-
deranged.
No. I
Yeah.
don't care about convincing
Much
you
more
guys
deranged.
with your cult of fake nuance. I care about speaking to the American people who saw with
God
their eyes
forbid we
what's
should have
happening.
nuance.
Yeah, because it's fake nuance. That's the problem. You have JD Vance out there saying that this guy, it should have absolute immunity. Absolute immunity. So
I
if you
don't
rape
agree.
somebody, he should be able to get off. This is fucking
I mean, she hit
ridiculous.
him with her
Absolute
car.
immunity.
I don't
we went
agree.
from nobody's
Nor
above the law in this country.
nor do I think, Kyle, nor do I think that Renee Good was deliberately trying to run over this ICE officer. I just don't think that is,
Okay,
there's
and the
any
guy was
evidence
trying to kill her.
that she was trying to do that or to cause him
Correct,
bodily
she
harm.
wasn't.
I think it was quite clear from the wheel positioning that she was trying to drive away. And the
Hold
guy
on, Piers,
was
you're
ignoring
right.
his
That's
training
right. And
to
here's the
stand
thing,
in front
Piers,
of her.
if you
And he
watch
had
closely-
a past incident, which probably in the moment made him fear the same thing was going to happen.
Piers, I
And he
just hold
shot
on.
her.
We have to have one
If you
factual
watch
correction
closely,
here.
All right, Michael,
just
excuse
one
me,
little bit to
excuse me.
inject some
I
facts.
literally
One second.
Michael Knowles trying to interject some common sense. Who's the AA character in sunglasses? That's Kyle Kalinske. He's like a far lefty guy, but he does look like a AI character. He looks like someone's like create a character in a video game.
Kyle.
even made
We
the
just need
fucking
one little
point I was
correction
trying
here.
to
All
make
right,
at the
don't talk at the
beginning.
same time.
And
The
you guys are
wheels were
talking over
aimed
me.
at the cop when
Let
she
me-
accelerated.
All right, Kyle,
wheels
Kyle,
were
I'll come
aimed at
back
the
to you.
cop
Let-
when she accelerated.
Kyle,
Hey, Warren.
Kyle, I will come back to you. Let Michael just interject on this one point. Michael.
This is really important because I feel sorry for the woman. It's very sad that she died. I'm not in any way happy that she died. She was in that position, one, because her lesbian partner said, "Drive, baby, drive, drive." The lesbian partner then said, "It's my fault. I told
Why
her
is
to
it
be out
relevant
here."
that she's a
Hey,
lesbian?
hold on one
Michael?
second.
Why is
Well,
that
no, hang
relevant
on.
that she's
But
a
Michael,
partner?
okay,
You
but
interrupted
Kyle,
me.
I actually really like the fact that Michael Knowles is really driving it home, like her lesbian partner. Why is it important that she was a lesbian, Michael?
I'm
So,
interrupting.
Kyle,
Why is it relevant that
calm
she's a
down.
One
lesbian?
second, Kyle. I'm just trying to have
actually,
a
I would
conversation.
I would say it's irrelevant that she's a lesbian. Secondly, drive can be an entreaty to drive away, which is what I think she was doing. Thirdly, the demeanor of Renee Good in the final video that came out shows somebody pretty calm, certainly not confrontational, certainly doesn't look to me like somebody intent on mowing down an ICE officer. I think she just wanted to get out of there.
Are you suggesting, Piers, hold on, are you suggesting that because a woman says I'm not mad, that means she isn't mad? I think anyone who's ever interacted with a woman knows that's not what that phrase means. Second of all, we don't.
Yeah, no, exactly. They're trying to hide behind that. Like, I'm not mad, but clearly, like, she wasn't being truthful there. She was being passive aggressive. Okay, but they're trying to hide behind that, saying, "See, look, she's saying that she's not mad."
Have to just judge by her words. She accelerated. You can look at it in the footage while the tires are aimed at the cop. And this is a message. I feel bad for her. She was indoctrinated into thinking that you're allowed to drive your car at cops or disobey police orders or block traffic and create a dangerous situation. This is an important message to all the leftists out there who want to do this. You cannot drive your SUV into a police officer. If you do that, you will be shot in the face and deserve it. And it will
Good
be
to see
very,
a JS
very
Urban
sad.
Adventures.
All right, Kyle, back to you.
I love that we're now doing character assassination of a 37-year-old soccer mom who got shot in the face 3 times. You're fucking disgusting for doing that, and you know that you're disgusting for doing that. And if you watch the video closely, he switches hands with his phone to prepare to grab his gun before he was in any danger whatsoever. Okay, so this guy,
he knew what he was
doing.
Him.
He knew what he was getting himself into. These people are looking for trouble. They're going to Minneapolis. They are cracking skulls. They are rounding up innocent people.
These people
they absolutely are Trump's Gestapo, and everybody knows it.
All right, let me bring in Dave Smith. Dave Smith, what's your...
Yeah, no, exactly. No, the people that are going against ICE are the ones that are looking for trouble there.
View of this?
Well,
ICE are just trying to do their jobs. Their jobs are to detain illegals and to get them out of the country. That's their job.
Hey, as much as it pains me to say, I really completely agreed with Coleman on that. I'm just kidding. I don't mind agreeing with Coleman. No, but I thought that was a very thoughtful take, and I think I agreed with all of that. I mean, look, like this is a really tragic thing that happened. I don't think she was trying to run over the officer. It seemed to me that she was trying to peel out of there, and he got spooked and he shot her. And look, however you feel about this morally, the fact is that in the United States of America and just about every other government, if law enforcement has you there and telling you, you just can't peel out. I mean, it's just a really unwise move to try to drive your car away. And again, you can feel about that however you want to, much like the Iranians shooting rioters who they think are going to topple the government. Like any government's going to shoot rioters that are trying to topple that government, including ours. And however you feel about it, that's the way states work. I do think there's like a broader thing that I would really think that Trump supporters, right-wingers in this country might want to think about. And I say this as someone who's I'm a real immigration restrictionist. I mean, to me, that I don't think everyone in the world has a right to enter the United States of America. I think that the American people have a right to take in whoever we want or whoever we don't want, in the same way that I have a right to, have whoever I want at my house for any reason that I choose to. And
yeah, why do people not understand it doesn't matter what her intention was, it matters what she did? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all that matters is that she hit him with the car. It doesn't matter if she meant to or not. She did. And he has every reason to like defend himself in that situation. Like if she's going to be like, even if she didn't intend to hit him, if she was going to be reckless, if she was going to be so reckless that she would have accidentally hit the officer, what would she have done if she would have went down the road? Like if she would have peeled out of here, would she have accidentally hit someone else? So yeah, it doesn't matter the intent. The fact of the matter is she did hit him.
And so anybody who's here illegally, I think we have a right to remove them. But I do think you got to start to.
Oh, there you go. That's what you should have stopped. We do have the right to remove them. So let's see how Dave's going to turn this into an L take.
The same way that I have a right to, have whoever I want at my house for any reason that I choose to. And so anybody who's here illegally, I think we have a right to remove them. But I do think you got to start to ask some real questions about what type of juice we're getting for this type of squeeze, and real questions of what we're doing to our own neighborhoods here. I mean, you really do have a situation, as Coleman kind of outlined, where like masked federal agents are kind of acting like thugs.
Yeah, there you go. There's the L take here. So listen, if these, we already offer a program. We're already offering $1,000 to self-deport. Okay, we're already offering a peaceful way for them to leave the country willfully. Okay, we're already offering that $1,000. We're already giving them this. Okay, so the ones that are still here that are not taking the self-deport option, okay, they're not going willfully. They're not going willfully. They're not going peacefully here. They're not going peacefully. So obviously the ICE, and also too, again, I want to repeat it again. There's encouragement from the government, like the governor Tim Walz, to go against ICE and such, and treating ICE like they're the enemy. So it's exacerbating the situation. So obviously ICE has to do things like cover their face so these lefty lunatics don't try to dox them. They have to do things like that because there's already opposition going on here. So no, this isn't a case of like, well, they should show up without the masks or stuff. There's already a strong opposition against ICE. So they have to do these things. If these people were leaving peacefully and the lefties weren't attacking ICE, then yes, ICE could be able to do their jobs peacefully without any force used and such. But that's not what's going on. Therefore, they have to do these things.
Pulling out guns in suburban neighborhoods in front of, and for all of this, for this big show of force that is such a provocation of the rat.
A provocation. Just them being there, it's provocative. That's the same argument these lefties use. Oh, by them ICE showing up, that's provoking them more. It's making the situation worse.
Left in this country and getting them out on the streets in front of, and for all of this, for this big show of force that is such a provocation of the radical left in this country and getting them out on the streets.
Oh, so it's ICE that's provoking the freaking left. It's ICE that's provoking the left. Okay. Oh, it's not the freaking the crazed people in our government, the people in our government that are encouraging this situation, that are saying, yeah, go against ICE, resist. Oh, it's not that. It's not this TDS that's going on that's causing the lefties to do this. No. It's ICE just being there. It's provoking them. Vic, this is why Andrew correctly points out that libertarians are ultimately a different flavor of progressivism. They have so many views that align with progressives. Yeah, I agree. Again, Dave was literally saying talking points that Kyle was nodding his head and agreeing with. If I were to say anything that Kyle would be like, yep, I agree with that, I would already know, oh shit, I think I have a bad take here. Because if this lefty lunatic Kyle Kulinski over here is agreeing with me, I must be saying something that's wrong. But Dave was like, oh, me and Kyle agree. You should never agree with these people. Never agree with these lefties like Kyle Kulinski.
I've seen the Trump administration says 10 million illegals came in under Joe Biden. I've seen estimates that are north of 30 million illegals totally in the country. And for all of this, we're talking about getting like a couple 100,000 of them. So in other words, we're not even making a dent on the real problem. And yet we are doing something where more incidents like this are more and more likely. And I got to say, and I appreciate even that Michael said, like, there's a tragic thing, but I'm sure he saw too, some of like the ghoulish response from so many right wingers, like on Twitter and stuff, celebrating.
And you know what? It reminded me. And you know what,
terrible.
Dave? It reminded me of the reaction from the left to Charlie Kirk's murder.
Yeah,
right? There was just a complete.
no
there was not just
it's a different situation.
Not just an absence
but there
of.
is.
Well, I would say look, different things, but not just an absence of basic empathy and humanity, but a willful, gleeful celebration of somebody's death, right? And in both cases, I don't think either person deserved to die. Is just my gut feeling about it. So at the very least, even if you do think she brought the situation on herself, and I certainly don't think she was blameless in her decision making leading up to what happened, to the confrontation. But even if you believe that, to then sort of
Wait, hold on. I missed something. I heard them bring up Charlie Kirk. That is he comparing that Lefty saying that Charlie Kirk brought it on himself is the same as us saying she brought it on herself? This is oh my god, this is like such stupid logic here. What was Charlie Kirk doing? Was Charlie Kirk obstructing the law? Was he breaking the law? Was he obstructing officers? Was he doing anything that was bad? Even morally, was he doing anything that was bad? No, he was literally debating college students like he always does. Okay, the reason why they say he brought it on himself is because they're so just how do you say, they're so loony that they think what he was doing was spreading hate. They're so out of their minds that they think he was spreading hate, that he was going around preaching hate and contributing to the trans genocide and all this bullshit that they believe in, that he deserved it then because he was giving the wrong opinions. Okay, so that's where that comes in. They thought, well, if he wasn't there saying the things that he was, this wouldn't have happened to him. In reality, Charlie Kirk wasn't saying or doing anything wrong. This woman here, however, was actively obstructing the law. She was trying to help illegal immigrants, by the way, to not be deported. Okay, so it's not the same thing. It's not analogous. All right. She also chose to drive away and pretty much hit an officer right there. Okay, so what was the officer to do? She didn't have to drive away. She could have complied and moved out of the street peacefully. The cops weren't being, the officers weren't being aggressive with her. It was actually a pretty cordial, on their part anyway, a cordial interaction. The cop that was hit wasn't even aggressive or anything. He was just filming the car. And then all of a sudden, freaking Snizzlicker came on and was like, drive, baby, drive. And so then she freaking started to peel out and hit the officer, and the officer shot in retaliation. She had choices that she could have made. She actually did bring it on herself because she didn't have to be in the middle of the street and she didn't have to accelerate toward the cop. So it's not analogous here. It's so crazy when people say that it's analogous. Thank you very much, Nate, for the $10. 2 agents involved were called in to block her from repositioning and further complicated the operation that was going on. Their directive was to continued out if she needed to be crested or just ticketed. She is the one who was in control of the vehicle, attempting felony evasion and suffered the consequences. Yeah, exactly. At worst, she would have been ticketed. Like if she would have just moved out of the way peacefully, everything would have been fine. She exacerbated the situation. And thank you very much for the other 5, Nate. Semantics are important, ICE, regarding federal agents, not police officers. Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much, Nate, for all your support, by the way. The moment she drove away, whether she hit him or not, lethal force is authorized. You are now fleeing against the orders of an officer in a 2,000-pound missile. Yeah.
Gleefully celebrate. She had it coming. She deserved it.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah.
By the way, no one is gleefully celebrating this. We are not celebrating her death the same way that these lefties celebrated Charlie Kirk. We don't even really know this woman. All we know is that, yes, she played a part in her demise. That was it. She could have made better choices, and instead she made the wrong ones for all the wrong reasons, and now she's gone. It's actually sad that this happened. I actually see a lot of people on the right blaming the people who are riling these lunatics up, because this is what happened. So no, we are not celebrating in the same way. But Piers is a fucking idiot.
She's a mother of a young kid, and she, is not even 40 years old. So what have we become as a society when you're thirsty?
Lots of people are celebrating. A lot of people are making jokes. I'll give you that. There are a lot of people making jokes, but we're not celebrating it in the same way that the lefties celebrated Charlie Kirk. I'm sorry. It's just not. No one is celebrating saying, yeah, hell yeah, that woman's dead. Fuck yeah. Like people are saying, well, fuck around and find out. I do see that. But no one is celebrating the way that the lefties were celebrating the way that Charlie Kirk. Because see, here's the thing. Our view is, well, this is what you get when you obstruct ICE. Okay, that's what we're saying. The left is happy that Charlie's gone because Charlie was actually spreading a message that they don't like. So now that he's silenced forever, they're happy about that. They think Charlie was spreading hate. So they're happy that he's gone. That's why they were celebrating. So no, it is not the same. By the way, speaking of fuck around and find out, thank you very much, Bandit, for $2. Poor choices, poor outcomes, also known as FAFO. Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much, Bandit.
Thought it's not. This is a tragedy. Whatever you think of what happened here, it's a tragedy that she ends up dead. I think.
And he hasn't been arrested yet. And Jonathan Ross hasn't been arrested yet. And stop and think about why that is.
Coleman was right
protecting their
about that too.
criminals.
He's not. Listen, he's not going to jail. I mean, this is
No,
just.
he's not.
I'm sorry. And look, the legal system.
There might not even
is
be a trial,
totally
Dave. There might
rigged.
not even be a trial, bro.
Well, look, but
he didn't
but
do anything wrong.
Well, look, but as
Oh
Coleman
my
pointed
God.
out, and I mean, I would say it's slightly different, but
Proud
the legal
fascist.
system is totally rigged on behalf of cops, and it's just not the same type of standard for federal law enforcement or for local law enforcement that it is for regular people. And when
Nor should it be.
legally speaking, once
But we have
her
seen some
car
cops
is
go to prison too, though.
okay. Yeah.
You
But
know,
that's
you know
not
the
in
difference. You know, there's
situations
a
like
cult.
this.
There's a cult.
Legally speaking,
You know what there
if
is, though,
there's a
Dave.
car
Dave.
coming
But
at a
Dave, there's
cop,
also
they're
there's
getting
also
off.
there is a cultural.
Thank you very much, Bandit, for $2. Acknowledging FAFO is not celebrating her death. Exactly. Thank you very much.
aspect to this. And I'm not going to
Oh yeah.
I'm not going to
Yeah,
go back
for
into
sure.
all this again. But if this situation had happened in my country, I'm in London right now. This had happened in central
They'd
London.
be alive.
It's almost unthinkable. This country.
Yeah, they would be alive because there is no freaking illegal immigration enforcement in England right now. So yeah, you're right.
A situation would happen because we just don't obviously have the gun culture. And I've always said the problem with the police shootings in America or law enforcement shootings is that they have an understandable presumption, law enforcement, that pretty much everyone may be packing a gun. In countries like mine, where nobody really has a gun, the police don't have that presumption, so they don't shoot. Right? It's a kind of chicken and the egg thing. And you know, it's as I learned when I took on this issue. Americans don't want to hear it from an English accent. You got rid of us with guns.
Yeah.
Pierce,
I get
Pierce,
it.
I get your
Next
point,
year is the
but you know what?
250th
Well, let me tell you
anniversary,
something.
where you will all
Maybe if
celebrate
you're-
getting rid of us of guns. I get it, but I do think
Pierce.
that what the rest of the world perceives as a trigger-happy gun country is actually because there are 400 million guns in circulation. 1 million new guns get sold every month. So the law enforcement always have a fear, a rational fear, actually, that everyone they stop in any kind of confrontation may have a gun. And that
Hey,
is
Pierce,
simply
if your
doesn't
cops,
exist.
No, yeah, Piers is again, you know, he's British, so yeah, he'll every so often he'll come in with the whole my free speech. He'll go against free speech and he'll go against guns because he's in fucking England. So that's how it's like over there. So of course he's always gonna bring it back to the guns and it's actually the guns that are the problem. But no, it's not, Pierce.
Most
your
other
cops-
countries.
Maybe if you would have been allowed to have guns, your country would have been taken over by fucking by Islam.
if your cops were worried that people might have a gun, maybe they wouldn't be showing up and arresting so many people for tweets and
Well, I
putting them in
totally
jail.
agree.
Oh.
I totally agree. It was revealed.
That's good. That's Dave with a good point, actually. Dave Smith with a good point. Wow, where did that come from?
If your
most other
cops-
countries. Sorry?
If your cops were worried that people might have a gun, maybe they wouldn't be showing up and arresting so many people for tweets and
Well, I
putting them in
totally
jail.
agree. I totally agree. It was revealed yesterday 12,000 people have been arrested for social media posts. It's absolutely bloody ridiculous. But you know what? I'd rather that than young mothers getting shot dead for doing.
Oh god, really? He'd rather that. I'd rather people be arrested for mean tweets than a mother being shot dead. Oh, really? So you'd rather have just people like locked in jail for saying a mean tweet? Really? Is that what you'd rather have?
a right-hand turn to get away from,
Okay, now he has to. Now any good points he had about this. Now he's going back to the lefty narrative. Well, this woman was just trying to get away with a 3-point turn. Yeah, shut up, Pierce.
ICE officers shouting at her. But
Probably she did a left-hand turn first.
And there was a former
Yeah, and it wasn't because an officer was shouting at her. Again, it was very cordial. The officer wasn't shouting her at all. It was because the freaking snizzlicker was like, "Drive, baby, drive!" And then she freaking drove right into him. He was like, "Oh crap!" and shot her. Stupid Piers, man. See, stupid Piers.
cop who was arrested.
But
for
before
Charlie
we
too.
end this, I just want to end, Dave. You've had this big ding dong with Dan Bongino, who's now left the FBI. You said that his legacy is covering for paedophiles. This alludes to the Epstein scandal. He
It's an
responded by a lot of
objective
personal attacks on you. But as we've been talking, Bill and Hillary Clinton have defied a congressional subpoena to appear before the House Oversight Committee about Epstein. How significant is that, do you think?
Well, it certainly doesn't look good for them, but I mean, you know, if former presidents are ever held accountable for anything, aside from Donald Trump on the ridiculous trumped up charges, but like if we're actually holding politicians accountable for the crimes that they've committed in the past, well, that'll be the first time that I've ever seen it. So I don't know what Congress is going to do next. My guess is that they'll probably just do nothing, because that's what Congress typically ends up doing in these situations. But yeah, Dan Bongino, listen, I don't know what to say. Dan Bongino is in this like impossible situation here, which is why he like spazzed out and started talking about my kids and my family and stuff. And look, I know I did say that his legacy will forever be protecting pedophiles, but again, it's a matter of record. That is just true. And so look, Dan Bongino's got a real problem. You were either lying then or you're lying now. And you got to somehow, if you're going to come back to this world of doing these shows on the internet, you're going to have to explain that to people at some point. Like, you made this one claim, got in there, turned around and gave a hostage video where you said none of that exists at all. And now the stuff's been declassified. So he's
That's funny. Hostage video. Yeah, that's true.
said he read through the entire files and he knows for a fact that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. But we just found out there's like 5 million documents in the entire file. So like, what exactly is he claiming that he read? And what did
I
he
assume
see?
it was
it's all
regarding the
declassified now. Yes, sure. But I'm just saying it's all declassified
But
now.
also,
So
the
now
bottom
he
line-
can explain what he saw.
Yeah, and the bottom line is people on the MAGA side and the Trump administration, they can all say whatever they want. The truth is, they took us all up the hill of full and total transparency should they win the last election. And then suddenly, earlier this in 2025, suddenly the shutters came down. Nothing was going to get revealed. And now, bit by torturous bit, it's all coming out. And it's very devastating, and it's causing a lot of carnage with people's jobs and livelihoods, and quite rightly. But we are still
And
well
it's not all
away.
coming out.
But we're still well away from full accountability or transparency. They could just release them.
They've only released 1%.
They could
They've
release it
only
all
released
tomorrow.
1% of the Epstein
and
files.
I don't know
Yeah,
why they
that's
haven't
right.
released them. All I know is when people in
I do.
officialdom.
All right. Well, listen, not much disagreement on there about the Epstein stuff. Thank you very much, Nate, for $5. Those two women had already spent 6 hours blocking traffic and harassing ICE agents. The felony evasion was icing on top. Yeah, exactly. She was sitting there in the middle of the street for like a while. So thank you very much, Nate. And also, too, thank you very much, Senior Missile Monkey, for $5. So long as they are alive, it doesn't matter. They have no freedom, both vocally and physically. Piers Morgan, the Brit. Yeah, exactly, right? Thank you very much, Monkey, for $5. Very much appreciated. Yeah, so all takes all around. L takes all around except for Michael Knowles. But what do you expect? What do you guys think about this? Leave a comment in the comment section below if you want to see more Michael Knowles stuff. I got more. I got a whole playlist for you and more videos on the screen that I think you'll enjoy. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, did you enjoy that video? I hope you did. If you did, make sure you like and subscribe, or else you're gay. I'm sorry, I don't make the rules. I'm just trying to save you from sin. Also, make sure you catch the Cool Stream live Mondays through Fridays right here on my YouTube channel, and make sure you follow me at any of these links down below for everything Cool Vic.